Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gary with another Fan TV, man. Back at another video. At the content of the video, go smash that like button. At the content of this channel, go and subscribe, man. Look, so Ravens, Commanders this week, right? We'll talk about the injury report a little bit. I'll talk about the Ravens decided to bring back Dean Pease. Well, really, Zach Orr made this decision, right? As a mentor to him, help him out with what's going on right with the defense, right? I'm gonna give my thoughts on what I saw from the Ravens versus the Bengals, and yeah, we're gonna go from there, right? So. So as far as the injury report goes, right? Ravens had a couple key guys return to practice today. So you had your Rashad Bateman, you had Ronnie Stanley, you had Marlon Humphrey, right? All guys returned back to practice after being DNP. Okay, Charlie Kohler progressed. He's a full participant. Roger Rosengarten has been limited both days. All right, Andrew Voorhees has been full both days in practice, right? As far as guys looking, that's not happening for right now. Malik Harrison, two back-to-back DNP. Project Washington, back-to-back DNP, and Arthur Marlette. I'm not sure I mentioned him already, but back-to-back DNPs for him as well. So another guy like this coming back is Deontay Hardy, Ravens punt return specialist. He missed last week, right? So and the Ravens made some crucial mistakes on special teams regarding fielding punts, kicks, all that kind of stuff. So having him back will be a help, right? So that's good news. All right. So that's kind of the injury report, right? So when I look at it, Marlon Humphrey making a big progress, right? Because if you watch the Instagram live, he's in the walking boot, and even the reporters said that coming out to stats, he's in the walking boot, right? To be in the walking boot to transition into practice, huge step, right? Rashad Bateman has his best game of the year, right? And this has kind of been the theme with Rashad Bateman's career, right? You have a really good game, then you're injured, right? So hopefully there's nothing for him, right? I saw a stat from PFF, which I'm sure a lot of people saw, that Rashad Bateman is far and away the best wide receiver against press coverage in terms of separation in the NFL, right? So when you have this kind of numbers, right, that you're putting on tape, then you're actually matching that with actual production like you did versus the Bengals. You would hate for that to be derailed by injury, right? So hopefully that's nothing, right? Then on top of that, Ronnie Stanley and Roger Rosengarten are looking like two stalwarts at left and right tackle. Rosengarten only came out because of injuries. He missed I think maybe he missed 5 to 7 snaps, something like that. But he's looked good as a starter. Ronnie Stanley, just like all pro Ronnie Stanley again, right? So the Ravens are starting to roll, but it's getting to that grind of the year where, that time of the year where it's just a grind and injuries happen, right? So we'll see what happens from here, all right? But I want to talk about the Ravens bringing in Zach Orr. I mean, not bringing in Zach Orr, bringing in DPs to help Zach Orr, right? So my initial thought of it was good for Zach Orr for asking for help, right? He realized that it wasn't going how he wanted it to go for him, so he brought in support, right? When I think of how, Mike McDonald versus Zach Orr, right, which is always going to be the comparison, at least till, it gets on the right track, right? Mike McDonald he was better at shutting down the passing game, but the Ravens struggled in run defense, okay? We saw that teams around the Ravens, right? We saw that versus the Rams last year. Zach Orr has got the Ravens playing really, really good run defense, but they're struggling in pass defense, right? And that could be for a number of factors, right? So bringing in a guy that you trust as a mentor to you, that you played under, that you think can get you on the right track, I'm all for that, right? Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of Dean Pease when he was the actual Ravens defensive coordinator, right? So I hope he's not influencing play calls, right? And it's just to say, just to help Zach Orr prepare throughout the week. I hope it stays at that because, like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of DPs, but he was actually calling the plays. He was very conservative, I believe. So, but that was my opinion on him, right? But so for Zach Orr and this Ravens defense, when I watched them play versus the Bengals, right? So a couple of things stood out to me, right? Marcus Williams' positioning kind of stood out to me right early in the game. I felt like he was playing a lot at in the curl flat kind of area, and to me, that's just not what he's best at, right? So he's not really a come downhill physical safety that's going to play that way, right? A lot of times they had Eddie Jackson kind of roll to the deep post, right? And Eddie Jackson has known to be a ball hawk in the past. I'm not sure he's that player anymore, right? So I would prefer Marcus Williams being deep, right? The deep touchdown that was scored, Marcus Williams was in the area, but that wasn't his fault. That was on Marlon Humphrey. That was a blown coverage, right? So I would prefer Marcus Williams deeper, right? In the second half, he was more deep. You know what I mean? He was playing the role that he's kind of used to playing, all right? And then second of all, right, honestly, the biggest takeaway is that sometimes you just got to give credit to your opponents, right? Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were unreal in that game, okay? And they've been unreal a lot of times in their career. So there are plays where they're just straight up taking the ball, right? I mean, Brandon Stevens, Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, they're all over them. but Chase and Higgins just make better plays out there. Sometimes that's just what it is. And Joe Burrow too, right? He's playing on time with anticipation, throwing in tight windows. He looked really good on Sunday, right? So sometimes you just got to give it up to your opponent, right? It's not always about what the scheme did, right? Now, does that absolve Zach Orr and the Ravens from what they did? No, right? There's something that they could fix, right? One thing is the Ravens corners have to be better, right? Yes, you're going against good, talented receivers, but there are a lot of those across the NFL. That's not an excuse to get beat. You got to be better, all right? So that's on the players. On the scheme side of it, right? I think that he's putting a lot on Roquan. I mentioned this a lot of times now. I think he's putting too much on Roquan in the middle of the field, right? Roquan is kind of a man in the middle of the field on the island, right? Because they want to take Trenton Simpson off the field to be in more dime looks, right? Which I can understand. Right? You have Nate Wiggins now. You want to be able to move Kyle Hamilton around as a chess piece, right? So you're trying to accommodate that, and that comes at the expense of Trenton Simpson, right? I get that, but what you're also doing is you're putting a lot of pressure on Roquan Smith in the middle of the field. And I don't think he's adjusting to that well as of right now. Now that could very well change, right? It could. Too many times on Sunday, I think the Ravens were just beat by alignment, right? They weren't lined up properly. On a touchdown that I believe it might have been T. Higgins' first touchdown. It was Jamar Chase one. It was an inside slant near the goal line. Marlon Humphrey doesn't know where the line. He doesn't know where to line up at, right? He looks like he thinks that Roquan is going to take the inside and he's going to jump the outside, and neither thing really happens, right? So confusion, beat by alignment, things like that. That could be on the scheme, right? It's too many times that you can see on the film that the guys are communicating with each other and they're kind of throwing their hands up. What are we doing, right? So that could be on coaching, right? Are they not understanding what they're supposed to do, right? One of the key things for Ravens defense was last year was that everybody knew their role and where they were supposed to be. Right now, especially in the back end, that doesn't look like that all the time, and that's an issue, right? That's how big plays are allowed. Okay. And then in the game, honestly, the biggest thing, one of the biggest things besides Chase and Higgins just being, incredible players, was the Ravens' pass rush was non-existent. But that also kind of goes back to the fact that Joe Burrow got the ball out of his hands very quickly, right? The Ravens really only affected Joe Burrow a couple of times, right? Kyle Hamilton came on the sack when the Ravens all-out blitzed, and Nnamdi Madubuike had that sack on the last drive in the fourth quarter. That really kind of forced the game into overtime, honestly. It was a really, really big play. It was a stunt by Ojabo. Nnamdi Madubuike comes on the inside. He wrecks Joe Burrow, right? So that was a great play, right? So that was good, right? But at the end of the day, if your pass rush isn't getting home or the quarterback's just getting the ball out too quickly, that can have an effect on the defense, right? So I think Zach Orr did some things that didn't work as well, right? The Ravens did a lot of trying to crowd the line and back out. Joe Burrow wasn't fooled by any of that, right? When Ravens have played the Bengals in the past couple of years and been effective, yes, it's been disguises, it's been sim pressures and things like that, but it's also been a fact of we're going to keep everything in front of us and not allow the big play, right? I think it was too much of overly aggressive and not enough just, hey, keep it in front of us, let's rally and tackle, right? To me, that was a big factor in the game. So that comes down to scheme as well. Every game is different, right? How aggressive the Ravens played versus the Buffalo Bills, which I loved, which was great, because the Bills didn't have the same kind of talent the Bengals had, right? Same kind of the game-breaking ability, all right? You could do that. So Zach Orr has to kind of learn, like I said, this is only his, fifth game as calling plays as a DC. He has to learn that ability, right? To tailor the game plan to matchups, right? He found a rhythm versus Buffalo, and I feel like he tried to come out and do some of the similar things in this game, or in the last game, versus the Bengals, right? And it just didn't work out. All right, so that's just some of the things I noticed when I watched it back, right? I just watched the defense. I didn't watch the offense during that day, right? So Ravens offense was great. We know that, right? You know what I'm saying? It was fun to watch, but so yeah, for the defense, right? That's kind of just what I saw, right? I think it's going to take time. Once the communication gets down there, the Ravens have talented players who are ready to make plays. I still stand by the fact that I don't want to see Eddie Jackson play, especially at the expense of like an Ardarius Washington, right? Because Ardarius Washington can play a little bit closer, a little bit freer, and allow Marcus Williams to play in that deep middle that he's more comfortable playing at. Ardarius Washington can allow that, right? Or even in nickel looks, right? Ardarius Washington can play the nickel. And now you got Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton playing your deep halves, right? When you mix coverages up, right? So I think that's still a takeaway for me, right? I don't really need to see Eddie Jackson anymore, right? Or at least not right now. Okay. As far as the Ravens and Dean Pease and things like that, good hire. It's only going to help. I don't really see how it can hurt Zach Orr, honestly. So I'm all for it, right? If it's going to bring more continuity to defense and make them a better unit, I'm all for it, man. So those are my thoughts, right? I talked about the injury report, talked about Zach Orr, talked about the Ravens defense. Give me your thoughts in the comments, man. But it's Gabriel, because I'm Fan TV. I'm out.